Okay, so I'm excited because today I'm here talking with Shalinee. She's from Kolkata, has been living in France for 10 years.
Yes.
We have a lot to get into. So obviously the cultures are so different. Coming from Calcutta, living here, and you're married to a French man.
Yes, a white French man. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think are some of the... Did you experience a culture shock when you first came from Calcutta and lived here?
Yes. When I first came in from, well, I wasn't living in India before. Before I came to France, I was living in Dubai. Mm-hmm. I lived in Dubai for 15 years, but the Indian community, the presence of the Indian community in Dubai is very strong. It's much stronger than the Indian community here in France. So definitely when I moved into France for the first time, the culture shock was really, really great. I think the first 2 years especially was the hardest for me. But even now, after 10 years down the line, I always feel that there is something new for me to discover, to learn more about the French culture.
Now, what made it hard? Because I think a lot of people who might be watching, if they're thinking, okay, I grew up in India, like what would be hard? It should only be amazing to move to Paris. Like, what's the shock?
Yeah, no, when I say the culture shock, it does not necessarily have to mean something bad or something that is hard to adjust to. It would just be a different form of conditioning that we are not used to at all as Indians. There are so many things that I can actually touch about. The thought process of the French is so different from Indians. I think one of the biggest challenges when I came from India to France was to see, you know, the neighborhoods, or, you know, where I live. It was so empty of people, because everywhere that you go in India, any time of the day or night, you always see so many people around.
That's true.
Yeah. So when I first came to France, I was living 30 kilometers outside of Paris. So
Okay.
it's not even the suburbs, but it was the countryside.
Right. So this is different. Of course, now, if you're in Paris, in my neighborhood, I see people all the time,
Yeah.
all the day. Not quite as many people as in Calcutta, but it's intense.
No, you know, even though I do live far off from Paris, but I do stay in Paris a lot. Like, for instance, I worked 5 years in Paris, and my husband, he loves Paris, so we do come to Paris quite often, and sometimes we are here until very late at night. But even in the evenings, you know, I would be like, oh my goodness, Paris, you cannot compare it to any Indian city, because the Indian cities are full of people all the time.
It's true. It's true. Now, so what is it like being married to a French man?
Yes.
And how did you meet? Because I imagine French men as being like très romantique. Ugh.
It's true. Yeah.
It's true. Okay.
My French husband is very romantic.
Is he?
Yeah. Do you get the impression yourself sometimes? Have you met French men?
Okay. True story. I went out on a date with one French guy. I met him in India.
Oh.
I met him in Rishikesh. He was romantic, I guess, but he was creepy.
Oh.
Like, he was like,
Touchy-feely.
I don't like to be touched when I don't really know someone like that. And he was very like, he was like rubbing my leg. And first of all, I'm like, we're in Rishikesh. Like, you need to calm down. I don't even like that in Los Angeles, but like, it felt really creepy and inappropriate. And he was really good looking, so I wanted to like him.
This got in the way.
Yeah. So like, that's my one French guy that I went out with. He ruined it. So you got a nice one. Just the right amount of touching.
Yes. Very surprisingly, and such a good surprise, but the Indian women I know who have got married to French men, all of these French husbands I see married to the Indian women, they're very nice. Yeah. You know, they are caring, they are supportive, they are intelligent. It's easy to talk to them, because, you know, there can be men sometimes, I have experienced it, when you speak to the men, it's very superficial. You feel like, you know, they will speak to you, but they won't talk to you for very long. Maybe because they feel that you're a woman. So, you know, like,
that's interesting. Did you find that did you feel that way in India with men?
Yeah, yes. I don't know how to say it, but sometimes when I'm with Indian men, husbands of other wives, I feel like I can't really have a conversation with them for too long, because I feel they're not really there. They're looking at me, they're talking to me, but they're not really there. That's so strange.
Now, I will say, I do feel like even with Americans versus the French, there is something about them being there.
Okay.
Like even with people in stores, I feel like they'll look at you. Now sometimes they're looking at you like this. It's not always a pleasant look. But I do feel like when they're with you, they engage with you. They really give their attention.
Yeah.
In a way that Americans are kind of like, you know, they're kind of all over the place. Not necessarily...
Yeah, maybe this is something very special about the French, but definitely this was something that I was not used to before I came to France, and it was really wonderful because I got the feeling that yes, my opinion and everything that I have to say, my thought process is so important. You know, they want to hear it, they want to know exactly how I feel about it. So that was one of the changes that I felt, and this is definitely a wonderful change.
And how did you meet your husband?
I met my husband in Paris while I was working in Dubai. I used to work for an airline company, and at one point of time in my roster, I kept having a lot of Paris. So in one of my Paris visits, I met my husband at the airport.
At the airport? That's very romantic already.
He works at the airport, and well, you know, the airport was part of my life at that time. So that's how we met.
Okay, what did he say? Bonjour, madame.
No. I think it was very important for me. You know, the communication part is so important, you know, in a partner for me.
Okay, she doesn't want to give us the scoop on like the way he seduced her right away is what I mean right now. It worked. Whatever he said, it worked.
You know what the funny part was? He was actually being a little bit touchy-feely with me, and I liked it.
See, these Frenchmen. Okay, so it worked for you. My guy was, and I was like, no. But you were like, yes. See, this was good. Different things work for different people.
I still remember he was actually trying to help me wear my jacket, and he was putting my buttons for me, and I was like, huh? What is he doing? I didn't mind it.
That's really funny. And now you're in France, you're married, and you guys have kids.
Yes,
right?
we have one child.
One. Yeah. So this is a very happy story. From fondling in an airport to true love. It's wonderful.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm lucky because my husband, he's a really good guy.
Yeah.
You know, because after so many years of marriage, I see some other marriages, they don't really work out, or I see problems. My husband, he's someone who really encourages me and supports me, and for that I'm really thankful to him, because living in a foreign country, embracing a foreign culture completely is really not easy. Yeah. But if you have a supportive partner, it really makes everything much easier. So even though I do have my struggles, it's not very easy for me to make friends amongst the French, because the French, by their culture themselves, they're not really the kind of people who would make friendships amongst themselves very quickly.
Yeah.
So I have struggles. Life is a little bit isolating over here. I'm not used to the comforts that I had back in India, so there are struggles, but if you have a good partner, it makes things easier.
And when you say the comforts you had back in India, meaning like staff and like these sorts of comforts?
No. You know, in India, for instance, if you're like, oh, I don't feel like cooking today, you know, let's go get a taxi and go to my favorite restaurant, and we're gonna have lunch over there. You know, it's so easy, you can do it. Yeah. Over here, no. If you feel like having something special, first you have to think how many good restaurants are there around you, and then at least, you know, in the country.
And to be fair, right, she lives just outside Paris a bit. Yeah. I mean, for me, I have tons of restaurants around, but I don't like a lot of them.
Yes. No, it's the same. You know, like, you know, when we do come to Paris, we have to really know in advance which restaurant to go to. Yeah. It's not like, oh, let's just walk around and I'm sure we'll find something good, because when we do that, we face disappointments.
People think the food in Paris is amazing. I'm planning to do a video on like the food scene. And there are some good restaurants here, but also keep in mind, I'm a vegan, so I'm not just going anywhere. But, you know, a lot of restaurants are okay. Mm-hmm. You know, they're okay. But they're not like,
Yes, yeah. Did you go to that restaurant, Chartres Bouillon? I'm sorry, I don't really remember the name right now, but they serve traditional food, like snails and...
I haven't been there.
Oh, you're a vegan, I'm sorry.
Snails? Definitely not. But, you know, one thing I'm going to rewind to something, also something we mentioned before we started recording this, which was you mentioned how you feel like more Indian women are marrying white French partners versus Indian men marrying white French partners. Like, do you
Yeah.
have any theories on that? Why is that?
I have no idea, but I feel that French men in general, they do have a curiosity about the Indian culture,
Yeah.
and this is actually the reason why my husband he loves everything to do with India, the Indian culture, and he did want to find a partner, an Indian partner.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and I
He was
find
like looking for Indian women. When he saw you at the airport, he was like, I'm going in.
yeah. With the course of time, I found a lot of French men who think like him. They love they love the Indian culture. They love Indian food. They love Indian traditions, and they would like to have a permanent contact with the country by having a partner.
That's interesting. And so I have a theory actually about Indian males. So I've met quite a few Indian men who I think are very good looking and who could date whoever they want, but they think white women in particular, they think white women don't want to date them because they're Indian.
Oh.
Like they have a complex about it, and I don't think it's true. Like some of these guys, they're really smart and they're good looking, and I think they could date anybody that they
Yeah,
wanted,
yes.
but there's something in their mind, like I think they're programmed to think that they're not as desirable because they're Indian, and I don't think it's true. But I hear that more with men than with women. Like I don't hear Indian women saying, oh, I think no one wants to date me because I'm Indian.
Yes. No, for me, well, I don't know whether this is going to be my own personal view of it, but I've always seen that Indian men, they would date white women, they would date even women who belong to different states, so it's not necessarily from their own state in India, but in the end they would want to marry a girl who would get along with his parents.
Well, that is important.
Yes, this is more the thought process that I see with Indian men.
Okay.
With the Indian women, it's they are much more flexible and open. So they are ready to consider non-Indian men. But Indian men, they want finally to be married to a woman who would understand his parents, who would absolve herself completely into his world.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And also, to be fair, those guys I'm thinking of, I don't know if they were looking for marriage or just someone to date. I do think when you're thinking about marriage, it's a different conversation.
Yes.
And now you married, obviously, you're non-Indian male. Was your family okay with that? Because I know obviously India's huge. Yeah. People's beliefs are varied.
Varied, yeah.
But arranged marriage still happens. It is very common, and needing family acceptance is real.
Yeah.
In a way that it's not like if your parents hate your spouse in the U.S., you can kind of ignore them. But like in India, it doesn't really seem that way.
Yes, even up to this day, you're right. Arranged marriages are still there. But I am seeing much more marriages right now where the son or the daughter, they can have their own choice, because right now things are changing in India. So the parents, they have come to accept that the happiness of their son and daughter is the most important.
Yeah.
So they are ready to adjust themselves to a new culture. Like for instance, my parents, they can never speak to my in-laws. And that's a sad thing.
Even just because of language.
Yes, they have the communication barrier between them, so they always require, me or my husband to be around to translate everything that they say. So I see that there's a lot of goodwill. They're very curious and they want to reach out to each other, but the communication barrier, it's there, so it stops them. Yeah, so that's a bit sad.
Yeah.
But at least I'm very happy to know that there's a lot of good faith, and there's a lot of good feelings on both sides. They wish happiness for us.
Yeah. They
wish that they could be with us more often. So those are the things that ultimately in a marriage you need to look out for, rather than he speaks the same language as me, he speaks we have the same culture, but our families don't get along.
Right It's important.
Yeah. In the end, you need to feel good that the person that you have married, he's a good guy, and your parents, they can see that. That's important, rather than rather than I don't know, there can be so many reasons why families, they can't get along together. You know, there's so many things that needs to be looked into, like, you know, what's his education level, what's his profession, how much does he earn, what does he have already. Well, you know, when I first met my husband, my parents, they did, in a very subtle way, they did try to find out that he's fine financially, he's settled. That's important.
And that seems like reasonable, you know, that parents want to know that, especially if you're going to be in another country.
Yeah.
It's very reasonable to want to know that your child is well cared for and is going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, see, it's so nice to know that you found your French husband, your family was on board with it, even though they can't really communicate the way everyone would like to, but it's working.
Yeah, I have actually, I have another interesting thing to say about this. Marrying someone of a different culture is definitely challenging, but I think it makes you exercise within yourself, you know, your beliefs, and, you know, you need to expand yourself, you need to understand so many other different things. So it's not just a struggle about understanding a new culture, but your husband, he belongs to that culture, and his thought process can be so different from yours. So it's not just the country that and the people that you're trying to understand, but you're trying to understand your husband as well.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the initial 1 year, it's like, yay, we're having fun, it's party, you know, like, you know, we're having a good time. But after the first 1 year, you have to live together all your life.
Yeah.
So that's when the struggle comes in. You know, you're not just dealing with the culture of the country, but yes, you're dealing with your husband as well, because his thought process is very different from yours. And how can you make that divide go lesser?
I think that's an important point, especially because, yes, within your relationship with different people, you're going to have different points of view. And then when you add in different languages, different cultures, different belief sets, it's going to be magnified, right? Of just, you have a totally different frame of reference in very simple ways.
Absolutely.
So I think that's important to remember. So if you're considering an intercultural relationship, it could work, of course, like any relationship, but there will be a learning curve.
Yes, there is a learning curve. Like I said, you know, many of the relationships that I know of Indian women married to Frenchmen, there have been struggles, but you can overcome it. Yeah. And once you overcome the hurdles, oh my God, it's really wonderful, because you know, your husband, he starts getting used to you, the way how you are, your thought process. You start to get used to his thought process. Once you have overcome that hurdle, you can only then enjoy. Right now, I really love, I can see so many aspects of life in France. I appreciate the differences, because that's what makes everything so much more interesting. There's always something new to learn, and that's the same for my husband as well. Every time we go to India now, he knows a lot already through me, but there's still so much more for him to discover and to explore and to learn.
And by the way, I met her husband just briefly. Super nice, but also it's so funny because he speaks English with kind of an Indian accent, and he's French, so it's amazing. So, by the way, I meant to add, Shalinee has a YouTube channel that she has started, so I'm going to put a link in the bottom of that. She's just getting underway, so you can check out what she has going on, and there's more that's going to come up from her.
Thank you.
And also, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, make sure you do so. More conversations coming up, more things to talk about. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And I'll see you later.
See you. Bye.